The grand final is on tomorrow for Brisbane. Just the one change. No surprises. Darcy Fort is in. Oscar McInerney is out with a dislocated shoulder. For Sydney, no Callum Mills. They are unchanged. Dane Rampy's going to captain the side in Mills' absence. Kingy, you made some good points just in the ad break there that I think you should share just in terms of how we assess grand finals and particular teams coming from outside the top four.
If you look at if you do your own review, say, okay, looking back at the grand final, what would have happened? Because all year we've talked about can't win it outside the top four. Got to have home finals.
Yep.
You've got to get straight through to the prelim. You've got to have the extra week off. Just the 2 games rather than the 3. You can't, the travel for Brisbane 3 weeks in a row. I just feel like it'll be a factor. And it's almost impossible to predict that there'll be lethargy or there'll be an impact in terms of their physical capabilities. You can't predict that. No one can. And Brisbane wouldn't even be referencing that or talking about that. But I feel we will on Saturday night.
In hindsight, go.
Yeah.
Why do we get sucked into that? Yeah, no, and I think that's why part of the reason why you just go. It's just perfectly set up for Sydney. And you're right. Who knows the amount of wear and tear? I keep hearing that Payne doesn't train and Neil doesn't train and Hipwood doesn't train. Is that going to get you halfway through the last quarter? Is Logan Morris going to be able to run out the game? Is Darcy Fort going to be able to run out the game? I think there's more questions on Brisbane than there is on Sydney, who are just rock solid, great final series, have had the rest, got themselves on the chartered flight. There's almost like a seriousness and a business-like attitude about them leading to this game. And you may say, well, Brisbane are relaxed. That's a really good thing. We had Harris Andrews in at Channel 9 last night. I know Dunkley did 360 in the studio. Zorko was in at 9. There's a real relaxed nature about Brisbane, and that may work. But Sydney, to me, look like they really mean business.
That's all business.
They look like they mean
bunker
business.
Down.
Yep. Almost old school.
Yeah, it is. It's a mission, isn't it?
Yep.
It's to complete the mission. We've got 5 days to go. Let's narrow the focus. No one says anything stupid. Don't alarm the opposition. Don't give them any motivation. Don't give the media anything. If you've got to go and accept an award, be humble, respectful to the opposition. But I'm looking at it the other way. I'm going to throw a few questions at you. Are we being disrespectful to Dunkley, Neil, Ashcroft and McCluggage by the way we talk about the big 3 for the Swans all the time?
Maybe. And it's a really nice mix, isn't it, of players. There's a nice variety of players that can do their jobs. If Neil doesn't get it, Ashcroft can go inside and he can get it. Can Dunkley put a body on Heaney when he's in there and do that?
What if they beat him?
Berry's in great form.
Yeah.
Berry's in really good form. We never talk about Jared Berry. I know we have a little bit this week because of what happened in the grand final last year, and he's clearly motivated to rectify that and make amends for that. But, yeah, it has all been about Sydney's group. The
Swans can't win if Brisbane's midfield win that head-to-head battle. They can't win. Because I think the top 5 players at Sydney, in my opinion, are probably better than the top 5 at Brisbane. But the next 18 at Brisbane are better than the Swans' next 18.
I think Sydney's bottom 5 are better than Brisbane's bottom 5, but I would agree with you. So the players from sort of 18 to 5 in that are probably more depth and more star power and more likely to be able to rip a game apart. Like Loman can rip a game apart for you in 10 minutes. We wouldn't have said that at the start of the year. What Archie's been able to do, he can kick 2 goals on you in 5 minutes. Zach Bailey can rip you to shreds in 11 minutes, and we've seen that in the grand final.
Becoming a super
Wilmot's
talent.
a good player. Like Zorko, I don't think he's had a great final series at all, Dane Zorko. The numbers look okay, but he can do it.
He's pretty good against GWS, second half.
Yeah, second half
Very good.
when he kicked those 2 goals, but he was poor early.
Yeah,
and he was poor early last week and had a couple of Manor sort of torched him from a few centre bounces and his ball use wasn't great, but and Charlie Cameron's I think he's going at about 60%, Charlie Cameron, if he turns up. So that you can make a case for Brisbane, no doubt.
So if their midfield get it done, Sydney are in trouble. But so go the other way.
Where do you look? I really liked your thoughts on Brodie Grundy. Oh, you're probably really ahead of the curve on this one. I don't know, 9-10 weeks ago. What about the legacy of Brodie Grundy coming up against a ruckman who hasn't played for a long time?
Just has to destroy him.
Has to destroy him, doesn't he? Has to.
I don't want 60-40. I want destroying.
Yeah.
Because this is a guy, And we like what Darcy Ford's been able to do, and he's been a warrior. He's been the guy that Fags has gone to in the past as the sub, really, at stages over the last couple of years. He's only played a couple of games of footy. He hasn't played since round 7. It's a long time, isn't it, to come in for a final.
Straight into a grand final.
So it's all there. It's on a tee for Brodie Grundy to just rip this game from a midfield sense and a domination in terms of not necessarily hit-outs, but hit-outs that set the big three on a path to exit stoppage pure.
Yeah, and also like the around the ground stuff for me is what I'm looking at as well. So you go back to sort of round 7. These are the numbers that I think he can produce. Yes, he's had 24 touches. Well, we know he can do that. He's had 11 tackles as a ruckman against Gold Coast in round 7. This was the sort of stuff he was doing at Collingwood. He's had the 30 hit-outs in that game. That's the influence that 15 contested possessions, grab it out of the ruck, force it forward.
So I want a goal.
Tackle,
I want goals.
Goals,
I want him
push forward. I mean,
he can run him into the ground.
That's when he's at his best, and that's what I think for Brodie Grundy's legacy. I think it's a really important game for him tomorrow, and we'd all be thrilled for him if that's the case for what he's been through and the direction that his career has taken unexpectedly. But what an opportunity for him tomorrow! Huge.
The other one that I'm fascinated by is Joe Danaher. I don't think there's been a player that gets more feedback or conversation than Joe, and his move to Brisbane's been just sensational. For the code up north, for Brisbane, for Joe himself, he's just been sensational. What he was able to do in last year's grand final was awesome. On the biggest of stage, and everyone kept saying, can they win it with these two forward of the ball, Hipwood and Danaher? Well, I think a lot of people jumped on that narrative as well. So last year's grand final, he hit the scoreboard. He did it all. What did he kick? He kicked 3 goals. He had 16 touches, 8 marks. Like, he was huge. And when the game tightened, he was the one that really narrowed the gap. So if he can do that again, I think he goes into that next level of player. Like right now, where would he sit? His CV versus others is not as good.
No, it's not. It's just a rung below, isn't it?
It is. If he does it again,
if he does it again, and they win it, I mean, this is what grand finals is. It makes it what is so cutthroat. You look at both coaches, what's at stake for them, and we can talk about that. But you look at players, like if he wins one and he plays well, then we need to start talking about him like we haven't spoken about Joe Danaher. He's been a frustratingly good player, Joe, but he's never reached superstar status. He's never reached the heights of the best forwards. But if he does it again on the biggest stage and they win, I think we've got to talk about him differently.
He can just point to grand finals, can't he?
He can.
Like, he did that in the home and away. Yep, no worries. But when it had to be had, here it is. Moz is right. Fort can go. Maxie Gorn said yesterday, Fort, second best ruckman in the comp.
We haven't played for it. Like that, not off a spell like this.
Can't be the second best ruckman in playing twos, can you?
I wouldn't have thought
in the
so.
comp.
He may have just been talking about his tap ruck craft, but in terms of the task that is in front of him, it is significant.
I guess this has been my discussion around Fags for the year, hasn't it? That he prefers not to move a magnet and trust the player and hope for correction.
Do anything different though at halftime with their ball movement, chaotic, owning the corridor last week? That
similar to the week before.
Yeah,
I mean they just played aggressive footy, so it's a good discussion. So if Brisbane play the way that they've played the bulk of the year with that control game, it's got them to 6 goals down, 7 goals down, and 4 goals down, and then they've switched it up to that aggressive, chaotic game. Right? Great that they can play the chaotic game of footy, but which do you start with tomorrow? Do you say, look, we've been better when we've gone helter-skelter. Let's just go helter-skelter? Or do you say, no, let's just start with the normal, methodical ball?
And the complicating factor to that is, and yes, it was against Port Adelaide, but the control method worked so well for them last week in a different way, and you've done well to explain exactly what that looked like and how it was a change-up from their aggression, I guess, through the middle of the ground, but they owned the outside last week, 130-odd marks. Brisbane took 111. So is it
who's going to take more marks?
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, is it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Can you keep Brisbane to under 100 uncontested marks? I mean, I used to love that when a coach came in and said, right, this is so important for us this week. Keep them under 100 marks. This is their record for the year. So you go, okay, well, if I'm out there on the ground and my opponent is sort of 5 metres in front of me, I'm not going to let them get that easy lead-up mark and control the footy for another 30. I'm going to actually shut it down. And then that becomes really infectious as a group because you've got that sole target defensively, we've got to be switched on. And Sydney will hit those kicks. You know it. McInerney, Gordon, Blakey, they're all going to hit those ones. But if you turn it over like Port Adelaide did early and you score from that, so deflating. So I love that defensive battle as well. Yeah,
simple nature
very
of that
simple.
message. Well, I think it's more who rather than how many. If they can deny Zorko bringing the ball out from a Brisbane point of view and make it someone else. So I think Jordan just clamps Zorko.
You think?
It just goes to him and says, well, if we get beat, we're not going to get beaten by what we know coming into this game. Zorko's going to want a counterpunch. He's the best corridor kicker in the comp.
And the fact that he's loose.
Yeah,
he's one you can really get under the skin of, and then he starts making silly decisions, free kicks off the ball. He'll try and hit kicks that aren't there, and then that's a factor for him as well.
He can be rattled.
He can. Yeah.
For a star factor player, he's gettable, but no, John Longmire won't let him. I mean, Dane Zorko's a good player, very, very good player. He'll still try and impose himself on the game, so it'll be a test of wills. But Jordan just if it is to be Jordan, how do you see that matchup head to head?
Well, I think he's capable of hurting him the other way as well. I think Jordan's smart enough to. That's why I sort of rate those defensively minded players, but they're not just, I'm just going to take care of you. We saw it in the first final. If he needs to get off, he will. And I think he's capable and smart enough and played that role enough and experienced enough to, at the right time, expose Dane the other way, which I think has hurt them a little bit, Brisbane, through this final series. So we'll see how that plays out.
The last one for me, if Isaac Heaney can have the game again that he's had, the second half against GWS,
unstoppable.
And last week was terrific. He is unstoppable. Yeah. If he has another big game, and say he won the Norm Smith, and you're doing your Mike Sheehan style top 50, he's probably number one.
I reckon he is.
Probably number one if you can cap it off.
I think if I was picking first tomorrow of all the players, I'd pick him first.
Yeah.
And that's saying something in a grand final for where he's come from. He's the hottest player in football right now and the most powerful presence, I think. Love this time of a Friday morning in the gun. Kingy, now I'm led to believe you've got two people in the gun.
Well, I thought we were in the gun then. Archie's made his way in, and we were a bit stiff because as he made his way in, Eddie come back with the coffees. The focus become, what are you doing to the young fella? Almost
sending
bullying
the young fella out for coffees. 3 places you go to, Ed.
It was 3.
Public holiday, not
We got to Queenie's though, and I think you like that.
I love Queenie's.
Yeah,
I knew Queenie's would be open. Don't worry about that. I had a sneaky suspicion.
Found Queenie's.
Yeah.
They make a good coffee.
They're open on Christmas Day, Queenie's.
Well done, Eddie. Thank you. You get some more pocket money this week. Who's in the gun?
He's out earning the rest of us. I've got 2 blokes to put in the gun this week, and it's all about making amends.
Like it.
From having a poor grand final, one from each team. Nick Blakey's a different player now to what he was at 22 years of age, but he was still a damaging player back then. 10 kicks in a grand final, no score involvements, and 3 intercepts last time he played. Stengel and Close kicked goals on him. He's back into some reasonable form. Saw him play some pretty good footy last week against Port Adelaide, kicking the ball back into the corridor. He's the one. He can either create goals or cost you goals. So he's in the gun for me to have a performance. And on the other side of the coin for the Brisbane Lions, I'm going to put Cal Archie in the gun. In great form at the moment, playing the role that's a difficult role to play, diffusing that intercept marker. But in the grand final last year, really struggled. Just the 4 kicks, 0 impact, really. Subbed out of the game, start of the last quarter. So opportunity for those guys to make amends for subpar grand final performances in the past. And they're both in good enough form to just go boom, boom and tick it.
Yeah, it's really good. So that was who Kingy's got in the gun. Nick Blakey and Cal Archie for Grays.com, Australia's leading online auction marketplace. Grand finals, I look for leadership. I look for aggression. You can have a moment that will live forever in the history of the game. I look at Michael Voss and the collision that he has with Scotty Burns in the early stages. He gets up, they kick a goal. He's in the face of the Collingwood players like Voss. We're not to be messed with today. Can Harris Andrews have a moment like that? I'm a real fan, but last year to a similar point as you, ineffective for 3 quarters and was tagged out of it. Last quarter was enormous, and so credit to him for that. What are they going to throw at him tomorrow? I don't know. Is it going to be Luke Parker, or do they just say to Harris, like they should have done with Hogan a few weeks ago, just go and play on whoever they think is the best Sydney key forward, whether that's Amadi, whether that's McDonald, I'm not sure. But can he take a couple of big, strong intercept marks early and set the tone for his team as captain of this footy club? So Yeah, I just think I look for those who want to make a statement, and often you focus on Lachie Neale or Isaac Heaney or the leaders of the footy club, the best players, and Harris Andrews is in that category. And after last year, I got him in the gun.
Well, last year he got Frampton, didn't he?
He did.
He played on a player that was negating him, and for 3 quarters, nothing changed.
Nothing.
And that was the start of this discussion about Fags. I'm not going to Fags again. But Harris has a responsibility in this to go to the most dangerous forward. Don't just be on Luke Parker deep in the goal square all day and then turn and say, well, he didn't touch the footy. If Harris doesn't touch the footy, it's a huge win for Sydney.
It is,
isn't it?
So what are Sydney going to chuck at him? He'll have to be prepared for all of that. Parker was pretty good on Aaliyah when he went to him early after Aaliyah was dominant in the first quarter. So anyway, if you've got someone in the gun, let us know. That's all for Grays.com, Australia's leading online auction marketplace. It is easy to buy and sell with Grays. It is the Friday agenda. If you want to put something on the agenda, let us know. 1300 736 736. Of course, thanks to our great friends at Signet. Power every moment with a Signet Power Bank. I'm just going to divert away from the grand final just for a second because trade period's about to be a frenzy. I think it's going to be... I think it's going to be a frenzy.
A frenzy?
Yeah, it always is. And I think it gets more, it gets larger every year. And whilst I thought it was going to be quiet, I don't know if that's the case. And I think people are going to love it. So I am looking forward to that. But I just on a similar topic, Jake Waterman, I'm reading in the West Australian.
Yes.
Jake Waterman has cashed in on a breakout season, earning close to $1 million a season over the next 5 years after restructuring his deal at West Coast. He'd just signed a contract extension, basically. He just signed. He was in contract. There was no need whatsoever for West Coast to restructure his contract. Not only restructure it, pay this guy $1 million a year for 5 years. Yes, he's had one good year. But I'm telling you, West Coast have been pretty supportive to Jake Waterman, who had hardly played in the previous 2 years and certainly wasn't anywhere near the version of play that he was this year. And I'm a Waterman fan. I'm 1A on the Waterman playing. Like, I'm sitting up the front.
Well, you got him in the Australian
Of course,
team.
I loved it. And I think he was so deserving of that.
Crazy.
But he wasn't deserving of a 5-year contract extension at $1 million a year when they didn't need to do any. Why is everyone so nice? Why? You were happy to sign the contract. Your advice was to sign the contract. If you thought you were going to have a breakout year, sign 1 year and then go again.
Can you imagine if you and I ran a footy club together? Right?
Kingy, he's in contract. It's like...
You'd sack 5 players a year that are worth $1 million a year.
No, I wouldn't. It's like you doing a deal with Fox Footy for 5 years and in the first year, first crack rates its socks off, right? Rates through the roof. Number one show, the amazing sponsors coming from everywhere. You've still got 4 years left of a contract. And you go to Fox Footy and say, hey, you know that 5-year contract I signed a year ago? I want to do it again. Fox would laugh at you and say, oh, hang on, mate, we've got you under. We're not renegotiating.
Funny you bring that up, Cornsey.
We're not renegotiating your deal now. You've got 4 years left. This is what clubs are doing. And you watch Essendon do it. You watch Essendon get sucked in to renegotiating with Zach Merritt, who signed a 6-year deal not that long ago. And just because the Saints have offered him a big check, he wants to renegotiate, and Essendon will be really nice, and they'll pay him an extra $400,000 because they're feeling charitable. Ridiculous. Can't believe it. What's going on?
You make a lot of good points.
Thanks.
I'm not going to argue with any of them, except that will Waterman have that year again? It was such a big year. If they're paying him on that year, it'll be poor value from here on in my opinion.
$1 million a year.
He's
for
not a
5
$1 million
years.
player.
Now, the devil's advocate would say, well, he's had a pretty good year in a terrible side.
He's not a $1 million player.
No, he's not. He's not a $1 million player.
What is it? So Harley Reid's watching that thinking, okay, so what he's doing is $1 million. What's he'd be thinking, what am I worth? What am I going to get?
And what's the precedent that it's setting for other players who have a breakout year? So someone has a breakout year next year. They think, okay, well, I've had a breakout year, but I'm undervalued and underpaid. The club's going to have to renegotiate with me because I deserve it.
Did you see the Western Bulldogs? I was just reading the headline of the Super 40 here.
What is this
Western
all about?
Bulldogs have been urged to retire their mascots and undertake a name change after receiving a complaint from PETA, PETA, over their deformed Bulldogs, Caesar and Sonny. You can't be serious.
Oh, you shouldn't. You're not serious, eh?
What?
What's the deformed Bulldog?
Well, I don't. It amazes me that this is a story.
So, hang on. So, a Bulldog is now offensive.
Well, the dogs have been part of the
course they
pre-game and
love it.
They're terrific. And I don't understand.
Great mascot, the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I love it. This looks strong.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, I didn't realise that they had issues, but if they do, so what? They're the mascot. They're your own mascot. You can do what you like, can't you?
Big issues on our agenda. Acker's going to join us shortly.
He won't be happy with the Dogs mascot. I don't think he's happy about anything Western Bulldogs.
No, we might have to ask him about that. Didn't end well.
Didn't end well. It didn't end well. Is a nice way of putting it.
I did a function yesterday that Acker had apparently done a few years earlier.
Yeah.
And I think if you get him going in a nice, friendly environment like at a function, he's pretty keen to tell us his thoughts about the Bulldogs, apparently.
I love Acker. I'm an Acker fan.
We all do.
Because you know what? He's not scared to voice an opinion. He's happy to be wrong. He's happy to be right. And I think we need more of those characters. And people, they come at you when you get it wrong, and they come at you. Not much is said when you get them right. He's happy to work. He's a bit like you, but he's swum out the side of the flags a couple of times and been clipped pretty heavily.
Is there a role for him back in?
Do you think we could
full-time
Could
media?
we play a part in that next year? Are we doing next year, by the way? Have you sacked us? Are we doing Fireball next year?
No, we are absolutely doing.
I
Fireball
never know
next
where
year.
we sit because you sort of move mediums and
Not true at all.
you move.
Very loyal.
So we're doing this again next year. Actually, I might get you to do my contract. But anyway,
Wait, hang
we
on.
could get
I didn't
Acker
know
on.
I didn't know you were gettable.
Let's get Acker once a month.
Let's
Would people like that? We put a vote out.
043390.
Who should we have as our guests next year?
We're putting the show together. We're planning. That's what we'll do. We don't have off seasons. We get straight into planning mode. We're professionals. We'll start to plan the show the minute we're off this morning. Who should be our regulars next year?
Yep.
Mitchell's been a star.
Yep.
Sam Mitchell's been enormous.
I'm a Robert Walls.
I
tragic.
love Wolsey.
Yeah.
Wolsey's a gun.
See, all the people I brought on here, you stole for your sports
Yeah,
day.
I love
all of them.
I'm getting the one up
Hoyne,
here. Well, talk to the producer that shares
Yeah, I know.
this show and Sports
I know,
Day.
feathering his own nest
I
of an
like
evening.
Dennis. I love Dennis Pagan.
Yes, Dennis is a beauty.
I'm a Mitch Cleary man. I love Mitch Cleary, but he's
Yeah.
in demand. So there's
Joshy Gablidge, I got on a couple of
There's
times.
a-
All of a sudden,
no,
he's
he's
on
ours.
Sports Day.
He's ours
All of a
now.
sudden, gone.
He's ours now.
I spent all
Gabbo.
pre-season with him. Gone.
We can
Sports
see if we
Day.
can get Riley Beveridge. See if he can sing to us.
I'm not sure. That song I can't get out of my head.
All right, that was the agenda.
Born in the SA.
We need one more
He's
goal.
voting on the Norm
Before
Smith.
9 o'clock, we need one more goal of that because there'd be people waking up to us on a public holiday that had a big night last night that missed it. So I promise you, you will not believe your ears when you hear that